This video is Functional Skills Level 1 Fractions, and it goes over everything that you need to know for Level 1. So at Level 1, you need to be able to find a fraction of a quantity. You need to be able to write a number as a fraction of another number, write a fraction in its simplest form. You need to recognise and find equivalent fractions, and you need to convert between improper fractions and mixed numbers, and you also need to be able to compare and order fractions. Let's go over each of those and see what they mean. So first of all, finding a fraction of a quantity, they're questions that look like this. What is 7/10 of 63? The rule here is that you divide by the denominator. So in this case, you do 63 divided by 10 because you're splitting 63 into 10 equal parts. And then you multiply by the numerator because the question wants you to find out what 7/10 of 63 are. So let's see, we would do 63 divided by 10, which shows us that 1/10 of 63 is 6.3. Then we do 6.3 multiplied by 7 to give us 44.1. So 7/10 of 63 is 44.1. Here's some for you to have a go at. You shouldn't need to use a calculator for these, but pause the video if you need to. Find 2/3 of 9. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. That shows us that 1/3 is 3. And then you do 3 multiplied by 2, which is 6. So 2/3 of 9 is 6. Here's another one. Find 5/6 of 30. So the first thing you're going to do is 30 divided by 6 to give you 5. That shows you that 1/6 of 30 is 5. Then you do 5 multiplied by 5 to give you 5/6, and that's 25. 5/6 of 30 is 25. At Level 1, you might have a question that looks like this, which is asking you to write a number as a fraction of another number. So Rebecca got 6 out of 24 in a test. Oh dear. Write this as a fraction. You need to decide, first of all, which number there you're going to use as the denominator and which number is going to be your numerator. Well, the total number of points available in this test was 24, so that number is going to be the bottom number, the denominator, and I got 6 of them, so that is going to be my top number, the numerator. So Rebecca got 6 out of 24 in a test. Now you might look at that fraction and realise that actually that can be written in a simpler form. Let's see what that means. So when you're writing a fraction in its simplest form, there's a rule which says that if the numerator and the denominator, the top number and the bottom number, can both be divided by the same number, then a fraction can be simplified. Looking at my example for my test, I got 6 out of 24. Well, 6 can be divided by 6, which gives me 1. 24 can also be divided by 6, which gives me 4. So because 6 and 24 can both be divided by 6, 6 over 24 can be simplified to a quarter. Have a go at one yourself. Pause the video if you need to. Tom's garage carried out 45 MOTs last month and 30 cars passed. Write this as a fraction in its simplest form. Well, 45 is going to be my denominator because that's the total number of MOTs that were carried out, and 30 will be my numerator. So that gives me a fraction of 30 over 45. But that fraction can be simplified, and the question wants you to because it's asked you to write it in its simplest form. 30 and 45, well, I can see that one ends in a 0 and one ends in a 5, so they both must be in the 5 times table. 30 divided by 5 is 6, and 45 divided by 5 is 9. Now I've got 6 over 9. And 6 and 9 are both in the 3 times table, so I can simplify this further. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 2/3 of the cars passed. You might look at 30 over 45 and realise that actually both 30 and 45 can be divided by 15. 30 divided by 15 is 2, and 45 divided by 15 is 3. And that would get you to 2/3 quicker. But it doesn't matter which way you go, so long as you end up with 2/3, because that's what that fraction is in its simplest form. Now, fractions that mean the same thing are called equivalent fractions. If we look at the example of my 6 over 24 in a test, and we saw that I could simplify that to a quarter. So 6 over 24 and 1 over 4, a quarter, are equivalent fractions because they both mean the same thing. I could also look at 6 over 24 and see that both of those numbers are in the 2 times table. 6 can be divided by 2 to give me 3, and 24 can be divided by 2 to give me 12. So 6 over 24 is also equivalent, it also means the same thing as 3 over 12, and 3 over 12 is equivalent to a quarter. Here's some for you to have a go at, and which fractions in this list are equivalent to a third? So here I've got 3 over 9. 3 and 9 are both in the 3 times table. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 3 over 9 is equivalent to a third. It does mean the same thing. Looking here at 2 and 5, well, they're not both in the same times table, so I can't make that any smaller than it is already. So 2/5 is not equivalent to a third. Looking at this one, 1 and 4, this fraction is already in its simplest form because the numerator is 1. It can't get any simpler than that. So a quarter is not equivalent to a third. Having a look at this fraction here, 4 over 12. Well, 4 and 12 are both in the 4 times table. So I can do 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So this fraction is equivalent to a third. Here's some more. Which fractions in this list are equivalent to a fifth? So I've got 10 over 15. Well, both of those can be divided by 5. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Got 2 and 3 there. They're not in the same times table, so I can't simplify that anymore, and that's not equivalent to a fifth. This one I've got 3 over 15, 3/15. Well, I can see that 3 and 15 are both in the 3 times table, so 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So that one is equivalent to a fifth. Here I've got 6 over 30. 6 and 30 are both in the 6 times table. So let me see, I can do 6 divided by 6 is 1. 30 divided by 6 is 5. So that one is also a fifth. And here I've got 2 over 10. 2 and 10 are both in the 2 times table. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So here I've got 3 fractions that are equivalent to a fifth. They can be simple. At level 1, you need to convert between improper fractions and mixed numbers. So first of all, what's an improper fraction? You might know it as a top-heavy fraction, where the numerator, the top number, is bigger than the denominator. And we've got 2 examples here, 11 over 10 and 17 over 5. What's a mixed number? A mixed number is where you have a mix of whole numbers and fractions. For example, here we've got 1 whole one and 1/10, and here we've got 3 wholes and 2/5. You need to be able to convert between improper fractions and mixed numbers. So if I wanted to convert this improper fraction, 11 over 10, into a mixed number, the first thing I do is see how many 10s are there in 11. Well, there's 1. Which is where I get this whole from. And I've got 1/10 left over. Let's have a look at this one. How many 5s are there in 17? Well, there's 3. I know that 3 times by 5 is 15. And the difference between 15 and 17 is 2. So I've got 2/5, 3 and 2/5. This is a mixed number, and this is an improper fraction. Here's some for you to have a go at. What is 1.5 as an improper fraction? Pause the video if you'd like to have a go at this. Let's see, 1 times by 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. As an improper fraction, 1.5 is 3 over 2. What is 12 over 9 as a mixed number? Well, I'm going to see how many lots of 9 there are in 12, and I know there is 1. The difference between 9 and 12 is 3. So I think I've got something that looks like that. Let's see. Yes, 1 and 3/9. Now you might notice that 3/9 can be simplified to a third because 3 and 9 are both in the 3 times table. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So in its simplest form, the answer here is 1 and a third. At level 1, you might get questions which ask you to compare and order fractions. For example, put these fractions in order from the smallest to the largest. When I'm looking at this list, I've got 3/5, 7/10, and 13 over 20. I know that all of those fractions are slightly bigger than a half, but I don't know which one is the smallest and which one is the largest. To be able to compare them properly, I need to give them all the same denominator. So let's see what that means. And now I'm looking at the denominators. I've got 5, 10, and 20. The largest one is 20. And 5 and 10 both can be 20 can be divided by 10, and 20 can also be divided by 5. So actually I'm going to use 20 as my denominator. Now the rule is with fractions, whatever you do to the denominator, you must also do to your numerator. So I'm going to try and convert 3/5 into 20ths. I've multiplied 5 by 4 to turn it into 20, which means I've also got to multiply 3 by 4, and I get 12. Let's see this 7 over 10. Right, to convert that into 20ths, well, I need to multiply 10 by 2 to get 20. And if I've multiplied 10 by 2, I also need to multiply 7 by 2. 7 times by 2 is 14. So 7/10 becomes 14 over 20. And 13 over 20, well, that's out of 20 as it already is. So now I've got 12 over 20, 14 over 20, and 13 over 20. And I can compare them much more easily now. I can see that 12 over 20 is the smallest one, followed by 13 over 20, and the largest one is 14 over 20. Can you put these fractions in order from the largest to the smallest? Pause the video if you'd like to. Well, the first thing I need to do is have a look at my denominators. I've got 3, 6, 5 and 10. Now I'm going to look at the largest one, which is 10. 5 goes into 10, but 6 and 3 don't go into 10, so I can't use 10 here as my denominator. I need to find a number that can be divided by 10, 5, 6 and 3, and the number that I'm thinking of here is 30. Let me just see. Right, yes, 30 can be divided by 3, 30 can be divided by 6, 30 can be divided by 5, and 30 can be divided by 10. So I think 30 is going to be a sensible place to start. So if I want to turn this in 2 over 3 into something over 30, if I've multiplied my denominator by 10 to turn it into 30, then I've also got to multiply my numerator by 10, and this fraction becomes 20 over 30. Let's look at 5 over 6. Now I need to multiply 6 by 5 to turn it into 30, which means I've also got to multiply 5 by 5, and that becomes 25 over 30. Now let's look at 3/5. I multiply 5 by 6 to turn it into 30, which means I've also got to multiply my numerator, this 3, by 6 as well, and that becomes 18. And finally, 7/10. I multiply 10 by 3 to get it to 30, so now I've also got to multiply 7 by 3, and that becomes 21. Now I've got my fractions, I can put them in the right order. So I've got to put them from largest to smallest. Well, the largest one I can see here is this 25 over 30. So let's make that number 1, that's the largest. The next largest one, I've got 20, 18 and 21, it's this one. Then this is the third largest, and this is the fourth largest, or the smallest. Now I've put them in order there, from the largest one through to the smallest one. So let's have a quick recap. Do you feel confident with finding the fraction of a quantity? Writing a number as a fraction of another number? Can you put a fraction into its smallest form? recognise and find equivalent fractions, convert between improper fractions and mixed numbers, and compare and order fractions. If you need more help, get in touch with me or with Jude. You could also look at the BBC Bitesize website, the Corbett Maths website. And the other thing that you can really do that will help you with fractions is make sure you know your times tables. Good luck.